Ollie is just wiggling at Papa with the little stuff.
Left her abandoned.
I don't drive that far.
To ask you to put your phone on silence and please make note that this meeting is being recorded. Seeing how it's 6:30, I'd like to open up this public meeting of the Woburn Conservation Commission. It is June 13, 2024. First on the agenda is we have two informal discussions. The first is LCS Woburn LLC, Delaney at the Vale, DD number 348-826, and it's a request for a minor modification. Is there anyone to speak on this?
Good evening, members of the commission. For the record, George Ryan, civil engineer with Stantec. We had submitted a minor modification for the Delaney at the Vale project, requesting a modification to the cover type along a portion of a slope located on the north end of the property. It was kind of rock riprap fill that was originally presented and approved by the commission to be more of a seeded meadow type of material. We had some correspondence with the conservation agent, including some pictures of the existing condition, and since then had, basically at the request of the Conservation Commission, the applicant had solicited peer review. Well, the commission had solicited peer review on behalf of this request. We haven't taken any action since we were last in front of the commission, basically waiting for comment, suggestion from the peer review and to further this discussion with the commission.
Any questions, any comments?
Thank you, George. I would, Janet, would you like to speak first, or would you like a question first?
Well, I'll be happy to, because your questions always make me a little nervous, so say my opinion at the moment. So we did review this design, many years ago, and the Delaney at the Vale project has a subsurface detention system. It does not have any infiltration. They took the recharge from a different portion of the Vale property. the discharge of that detention system is going out through this slope. The slope was originally designed to be a meadow, but it is very steep. I drove over to kind of check it out. It is all kind of stabilized as riprap, kind of not large stones, more like large chips. I'm sure there's a technical term for that. But, so the discharge, the only thing that falls on it, the only thing that was going to fall on it as a meadow was what was literally going to fall from the rain that hit that meadow. It wasn't being managed any other way but what hit it. So now, instead of hitting a meadow, it's hitting this riprap slope that will allow the water to go through it. It's not so hard packed. It's not a concrete slope. It's enough of a jig-jaggy to let the water kind of run through and go in. And so I don't see an issue with the design. But now you can ask your question.
So, so my question was going to be, and I understand that it's the rainfall. If it was a meadow, it would absorb some of that water versus just all of it going down. And I'm guessing that it's all going through, hitting bedrock at some point, and then, what I've noticed out there is, what I think it does is it finally hits the bedrock and runs down to the base of the wall that's there, and then either goes out through the drainage or under the wall. And it creates, there's quite a bit of water that gets there. And I'm curious, I was just curious about, the volume of water that was proposed to be down there versus what it's like now, and the rate, I guess the rate of the runoff. Has that changed, do you believe?
Yeah, from the kind of looking at it from the big picture, it shouldn't really change because the rate for the Delaney site itself, it was all being managed by that chamber system. And so it's just what's discharging onto it. So that volume is hitting it. The meadow would take it up somewhat, but only during the growing season, which is, more than half the year. But in the winter, it would have been a frozen solid mass. So this does allow the water to kind of run through and to work its way along. You wouldn't want it to undermine the water, but it's steep, and it's always been very steep. So it was probably going to be running off anyway.
And when you say it's always been very steep, are you talking about when it was
The original design as a meadow
original design?
was
Not-
a steep meadow.
Right.
Yeah,
not
it was
as-
just a steep meadow.
Not as it previously was undisturbed.
Right,
Right,
no,
okay.
that was kind of
Yep,
it was a hill, but
yeah, okay,
those walls are pretty high out there.
right. I guess that's all I really had.
But I don't know did you do any specific calcs on increased volume or velocity running down that hill?
Not as a change from of the material type.
Yeah, it does seem it would be the same, because it's the slope is so steep that it was going to just go anyway.
Okay,
And now this way it won't erode, you won't have all that topsoil also kind of being pushed down.
so,
It's not very pretty, though.
no, I know, and in relation, I guess, to the steepness of the slope, there's a steep slope over there now that, on the Vale property where there was a wetland replication and restoration area, and that slope is fairly similarly graded. And it's very vibrant, filled with,
Is it as tall?
excuse
Think it's as tall?
I do think, it's definitely as tall.
Huh.
At the top it is, for sure. So, I am not going to be, well, I'd have to ask George, and as far, and if you don't, thank you, Janet.
Janet, I do have one question for you.
I do as well after you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Besides the water that Jerry spoke about, that was one of my concerns. The other concern was, we now have a different habitat.
That's my question.
You do have a different habitat, that's
So
true.
it's not going to attract the animals that the meadow would have attracted.
I share the same concern. I was curious as how much of a change
So,
that would be for
is-
different wildlife.
There's some possibility of getting some area where, deer and whatever might wander onto the property and use that piece of property as like they would have used the meadow. I mean, that was one of the things that I was concerned about with the original design, or made me say yes to that design, was because it was going to attract different habitats of,
Yeah, that really is a very good point. It does at the moment have some vegetation on it because the weeds are just growing on it. But it wouldn't necessarily, deer are pretty agile and they can go all over things. It would probably attract snakes at this moment, but birds wouldn't be necessarily nesting there now, because it's, like, birds might nest in a meadow.
Right.
That type of bird. But you have a very good point. It's a different thing.
thank you. That was your.
Yes, exactly that, and as well as not just the birds, but as well as any small, rodent type, the rabbits, which they can probably still get through there, but any other small
The ones that
critters.
are burying in, they'll have a harder time making homes in the rock that they would in a soil. But the soil was only 6 inches deep. So it was going to be underneath it the same thing. The same material that's there now was
So-
just
So
underneath 6 inches
it was
of
that
loam.
shallow, just the 6 inches
Oh,
of
yeah, it
soil?
was just some loam on top.
And so is that basically the drainage that's going through there now, which you say is pretty much the same flow, is just going down roughly that 6 inches or so and then getting downhill?
Well, no, because it would work through the 6 inches of loam, and it would allow vegetation to grow because it's watering the grass and the flowers and the wildflowers, whatever it was, the meadow was. Now, but then it would continue to go through the stone that is there, the bedrock, it's not really bedrock, it's more like stone chips. And it would have continued to work its way through that. And anything that grew, any kind of like the tree of heaven kind of stuff that, grows everywhere, that would be able to root in this kind of thing. But, and it still could. But it's just not going to have a nice flowery meadow, which would be more attractive to pollinators and birds. And you're right about the habitat.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, so I just had a couple of questions for George. George, what was the reason why the change was made?
So the slope of that area, hasn't changed from the proposed plans. And so the real change that we're talking about here is the cover type, your 6 inches of loam and seed. That site was a blast rock site. And, when you're doing earthwork early on in a project, if anyone remembers, that was kind of almost like a hill, probably upwards of, maybe 15 or 20 feet of a mound that was rock. So the contractor blasted all that rock out, and, there was a decision of what to do with it. And basically, you process, grind it down to, 3/4 inch, inch and a half for structural fill as much as you can. And there are going to be larger chunks, riprap, that are, suitable size for slope stabilization and other uses. Those materials were used to bring, basically your subgrade of the site to grade, flatten areas, fill areas, do your cut fills, including the portion of the top of that site, which was, there's still ledge up there. There was a lot of fill getting towards that northern end. That site, especially considering it's senior housing, is like essentially flat by, obviously not exactly flat, but by standards of that size of a building, it's a very flat site. The north side was filled up, including that slope. That, earthwork was done. You put utilities in, roadways, building foundations. Landscape typically comes last. So that material that you see there was in place to establish the grades. In conversations with the contractors, and specifically the landscape contractor, they had brought up, what I consider pretty valid concerns about placing the loam and seed, leading to erosion, getting the seed to actually stabilize, grow on that steep slope with that underlying rock, bedrock kind of ledge condition. We submitted the request, basically with the thought process of it's stable now, we know it accepts runoff. It's not managing runoff from the rest of the Delaney site. There's multiple stormwater systems in place there. And the risk of placing soils in that kind of open graded rock, having it not establish, run out, have stormwater come down it, run off, your topsoil down the hill, into that graded, down into, what would be the Vale site, former Kraft Foods, eventually towards Sweetwater Brook. And so really admittedly, it's, maybe some unfortunate timing with when earthwork activities occur compared to landscape. And it was, probably a year in between those activities. And we felt that, we wanted to bring it to the commission's attention, understanding, I didn't feel that it was a stormwater concern. The aesthetics and the habitat are certainly, I think, separate things from the stormwater. But just the high risk of erosion and, continued maintenance and just potential inability for the meadow to take on that steep slope was what generated the request. And then that backstory of how that site was developed certainly played into it as well.
Okay, and, I mean, at the Delaney site, that's where the slope is the steepest, but this will be taken up again with the Vale people, but the whole slope, basically, from the top to the bottom is stone versus meadow. So it seems like, to me, almost that we found a good place to get rid of the blast rock. I don't know do you think that you could loam that slope right now and give it a shot to make it a meadow, or does the stone have to be pulled out? Is that the grade that was proposed?
That is the grade that would be proposed. So any loam mix going in, hydro seed types of solutions would basically be filling the voids in those stones. The top of your stone grade is established, I think in compliance with the plans. And so your meadow would be going, basically in between the voids and the rocks, maybe like a slight covering, and then kind of growing in between them, very similar to the existing condition. But I guess rather than weeds, it's whatever seed you kind of put there. It's difficult to maintain as well.
Why would you need to, it's maintenance in terms of what?
Yeah, I mean, your meadow mixes, whether what was, spec'd on the landscape plans, maybe there's a better solution for, perennials that don't grow as tall, they recede in the fall, they come back in the spring, you don't need to mow them or maintain them per se.
Right.
So that would be the appropriate, that's what the meadow was intended to be.
Absolutely.
And that would be, what you would use there. So the maintenance really should be
Right.
minimal to non-existent. The biggest concern that, I think the conservation, the commission should consider and why we agreed to submit this request in the first place is really erosion-based. And we felt that the stormwater benefit from doing the meadow was nominal. If anything, you can make the case that having open graded rock is more pervious than a loam covering, especially through winter and freezing seasons. So without a significant benefit or any benefit from doing the loam and seed and then creating the risk of erosion, it was, maybe not a clear decision to make, but that's why we brought it to the commission. And of course, it's a deviation from the plans, so we couldn't do that anyway. But that's the discussion I think the commission should be considering.
Well, this whole ordeal came about because we did a site walk. We noticed the riprap versus the meadow. Told your people that you needed to go through this process because when you come in for your certificate of compliance, what was agreed to and what is now there is different. And I said, if I said it once, I said it 100 times in that big pre-construction meeting that we had, that this is one of the things that happens all the time, and we just say, okay, And it really bothers me that this was done without coming before us and asking permission to put the riprap down. And I, for one, am not real happy about it, especially calling it a minor modification.
I certainly understand that, Chairman, and appreciate, that frustration that certainly comes. It's no excuse for, on the contractor's end, on the applicant, on the owner side of things. The circumstances with the earthwork activities and the blast rock use, I think, presented a unique situation.
Oh,
And-
I don't disagree with that. I think it was a perfect way to get rid of the blasted rock, but that's not
Yes.
my concern. My concern is there was a change to the plan, and I said it like 100 times in the pre-construction meeting, if there's going to be any changes, come get permission to do it. And that did not get done.
Yeah. There was a site walk. It was brought to our attention. The landscaping at that time was not completed on the site. I think the owner, the applicant, did not have any intention of either misleading the commission or, continuing their work without pursuing any, approvals to do this. There were a lot of discussions, leading up to and at the time of the site walk on whether doing this landscape slope was viable. The owner had not made the decision months and months prior to the site walk you mentioned not to do it, and for lack of a better term, got caught, and here we are. There were a lot of conversations, that I was a part of as well with the contractor about the viability and practicality of planting this slope. So I do appreciate that sentiment, and I, completely understand for this project and others. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the point that timing was maybe, coincidental or poor timing or bad, perception from the commission's point of view. But all of these decisions, including that site walk, did occur around the same time period. And when the blast walk was placed and when the earthwork was underway, years ago, there was never a discussion. There was never any issues from the contractor's point of view, the general contractor's point of view expressed to me concerning the viability of doing that slope. And that's just an unfortunate reality of how projects are built and landscaping typically happening last.
So on the original approved and proposed and approved plan with the meadow, that wasn't a concern, the possibility of erosion when it was proposed?
It went, when the design plans were done,
Yeah, and brought to us and reviewed and approved.
yeah, I mean, in the design world, we look at the slope, we don't necessarily know the quantity. So we're here, we put design plans together, we look at a slope, it's viable, you can plant it at that slope, it's not, impossible. Those permit plans are approved and then the project, goes out to bid. Unfortunately, we didn't have a general contractor on board to maybe flesh out some of the practicality of things like what are we gonna do with all this blast rock while we were going through the permitting process. And so that's, when you look at the slope, it can be planted, it's possible. And then you look at 40, 50, 60, 70,000 yards of blast rock, and that would have been, months or maybe, probably 8 months after the plans were approved. And even then, that contractor dealing with the blast rock was the first contractor on site. Admittedly, probably wasn't thinking about landscaping at that point in time. They're following the plans, they're setting the grades, they're processing the rock. Planting's not gonna happen from 2 years after that.
So,
It is unfortunate.
Yep.
Chairman, I have a couple of questions. George, I have a couple of questions for you. So I wasn't on the commission when these design plans were originally presented to the commission. So my questions are around the design process itself. And you mentioned that you didn't have a general contractor on board when with the design plan. Looking at it now, if you're looking at it in hindsight, do you think it would be a good idea going forward to have a general contractor when you prepare these types of design plans?
That's, ultimately winds up being the owner's decision. I think there is value in having, a point of view from a contractor that's going to be performing the work always. You know, sometimes owners aren't in the position to bid that out or to use a contracting setup like a CM at risk that is willing to put a price on a job before it's permitted and before it's designed. You know, so there's a little bit of nuance and the benefits of making that decision. But to answer your question, I do think projects go better when the owner chooses to work with a contractor early on in the process.
So, you know, in my past life, I'd say, okay, I would ask for an internal corrective action, because I think that there's a significant gap in the design process where you presented a plan and you couldn't conform to the plan. And it was months down the road between the time that you presented it and then came to the determination that, hey, we can't do this, or there's a better way to do it. So that's what I would ask, and that's where a general contractor might come into play. So that's just me, what I would ask for, because in the end, to our chairman's point, you are going to come in and you're going to ask for a certificate of compliance, and unless you've got a bump between the design, as designed, and the as-built, and I don't see that I don't know if that's documented anywhere. I would certainly like to see that documented. I don't know how we can issue you a certificate of compliance, or I don't know how I could issue you a certificate of compliance without having that bump done and having that as-built prepare, you know, put in place in front of us in a plan. I would like to see that. And the other thing, and I'll just ask you this, when you talked about runoff rates, where you said that they were comparable, was that an opinion, or is that an actual calculation that was done between, again, the as-designed and now the as-built?
So yeah, I think the probably important thing to remember there is that area of the slope is draining, you know, downhill, you know, into the rest of the development, you know, off property. So the runoff rates are not exactly the same. You know, they're not calculated, and I'm not here telling you that it is exactly the same, because, you know, grass is different than rock.
Right.
Simple. The impact of it, like the fact that it's a relatively small area, the fact that it is not managing runoff from any other parts of the site, the fact that the rest of the site has stormwater management systems, and the fact that the remaining portions of the site are, you know, 40 acres of previously manufacturing fully paved area. In my, you know, and from our work and, you know, my professional judgment, the change in material, especially considering the underlying materials that were present in the existing condition and proposed, makes that difference nominal. And, you know, the entire project is designed for peak rates at each design point. You never match those exactly. Your existing condition, you know, your proposed condition peak rates are always some function lower. And when you're talking about hundreds of cubic feet per second into the Sweetwater Brook, that change in material, you know, especially considering what would be open graded rock underneath it either way, is of no real significant impact.
So how difficult would it be to put together what this difference is between the as-designed and the as-built? And that includes the runoff rates or the flow rates. How difficult would that be? It's almost an addendum to the as-designed. But I think it would go a long way. For me personally, I think it would go a long way in determining what direction, you know, I'd like to go.
Yeah, I believe we submitted a utility as-built, which included drainage, to the commission as part of the order of conditions, which required approval prior to paving that site. So we have, in terms of drainage, stormwater, underground utilities, that has been submitted and approved, and that was required prior to the project being paved. So the stormwater system and the utilities, the drainage that's functioning on the site is in compliance. I am unaware of any building changes that have resulted from the design plans. with the exception of this issue, I do have to give credit, to the owner and the contractor that was selected for being very diligent in following those plans. There's no paving concerns. This minor modification included a landscape plan, which did mention, some coordination of trees, lighting, hardscape materials in some plaza areas, none of which increased, impervious areas beyond what was, beyond what was proposed. I would consider those minor. There was always going to be a courtyard, with concrete or pavers. It's not uncommon in senior housing for the owners to work with operations, say, okay, this might be a little bit rounded here, maybe we should have put a fence here, make sure we have, access into all the doors. That was included as part of this as well. That landscape plan that was in the package is reflective of the layout materials that would be on the as-built. It's a very difficult question to answer, very pointed question. I am unaware of any, significant changes other than this request. And in fact, nothing has changed on utility, stormwater, underground, parking layout, roadway layout, anything that would have meaningful impact on the stormwater environmental side of things.
All I'm really asking for is the difference between how you were going to put the landscape in, what you were going to do with topsoil and seed, and what those runoff rates are compared to what you have right now. And that's a simple, that's a simple document that I'm looking for.
Understood.
If you have that, I would be very interested in seeing that come before the commission.
As it pertains to this change, it doesn't exist at this moment, but could certainly be created if that's the direction the conservation wants to go. I have not memorialized it in a memo. We had some discussions last time I was here on this topic about potentially going that route. We elected to consult with peer review, and if that's, a request that's made by the commission, for that or any other additional information, that's the commission's decision to make.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I just one comment, George. I see this, and it may be more beneficial, and I understand things change when you get on a construction site, but I just really see this as more of a cost savings. You had the material there, you were able to crush it up and apply it to a spot where otherwise would have cost you some money to do what was planned. And I get it, and that's fine. This may be more beneficial to the drainage, to the infiltration system, as opposed to, like you said, the runoff and the dirt and affecting some of the runoff areas. But I signed off on a plan that looked aesthetically was pleasing to me and was beneficial. I thought it was going to be beneficial to that area and look nice. And now with what we have now, it looks more like an industrial park, to be honest with you. And I know that has nothing to do with the drainage or runoff or anything else. It's just, that's not what we had before us to vote on. So for me personally, I'd like to see maybe can we come up with some kind of compromise? Is it possible to kind of do a bit of both there if we had some kind of, if you came back to us with a design, because we are losing some habitat for birds, for other animals that may otherwise have had it there. But again, I get what happens when you get on a site, things change. And I don't want to get into pulling stuff out only to make it worse. So if we were maybe to come up with a happy medium, I'd be more in favor of kind of meeting in the middle. That's just my thoughts.
So George, if I could, just to rebound on Commissioners Joyce and Meany, I was actually thinking similar thoughts. One's just a comment and I have a question. The one comment is Commissioner Joyce, when he's talking about manufacturing, they call it a CACA report, cause and corrective action, and that's what he's looking for. At the end of this, we are where we are, what happened, happened, and then that just kind of convinces us and say, yeah, we've got improvements in place for the future. So that's a side issue, and I think that's what you're looking for, a cause and corrective action report. It's a standard thing to do. The second thing is exactly what Commissioner Meany was talking about was, right on my mind, the tip of mind, which is there's the plan, there's where we are, look wonderful, looks like an industrial park. I'd be looking for the same thing. Let's come up, if we can, for a compromise. Let's come up with some compromise middle ground here somehow. There's disappointment on the meadow, there's disappointment on environment. Let's see, if there isn't a common ground, then we've got to come back and say there's no common ground, and by the way, everything's equal and you guys should just approve it. Or if you look at it and say, well, it's not really the same, and I see the point, there's got to be some kind of middle ground. That's where I stand on that.
Well, to move this along, this is informal, so you're not looking for any action from us tonight. I think you've heard the concerns from the commission. So when you do come in with a formal request for a change, maybe consider what the commission has given you for food for thought, and we can go from there.
Okay, I mean, just like, before I leave and kind of take some actions, I'd just like to maybe clarify a few things. It seems maybe, mostly aesthetics driven, some habitat driven, the compromise, I hear that. There's some concerns on the stormwater end of things. I kind of maintain that that's really shouldn't be the driving factor here. I think we heard from peer review something very similar. I just want to make sure we kind of understand where that is, and that the focus is more on the material growth, some potential habitat, potentially screening, aesthetics, and from Commissioner Joyce, heard some requests for calculations, and I don't know if we would defer that to peer review if we feel like there's a compromise on the materials and the need to do a stormwater analysis on that rather than the requested modification, which seems to be, for lack of a better term, going nowhere as currently presented. And so I don't really feel the need to run stormwater calculations on that scenario, as it doesn't seem to be amenable to the commission.
Commissioner Joyce, that's your call, I would say.
Well, I think that, as I said before, I'd like to see the calculations between what you have now, between what you designed. And that's what I'd like to see, simple calculations. I mean, you did it with a landscape plan in place, topsoil and seed. You have all those calculations. But now you've got something totally different. And I'd like to see it calculated again. I'd like to see the comparison between the two.
I think practically that would be between what was proposed and what a potential solution would be.
It's part of the,
Well, I guess there's a third, either the way it stands, and then also if you do come up with the compromise calculations.
yeah, that's right.
I would assume, that's me.
Yeah,
And with regard to the as-built or other conditions that have changed, I was pulling from memory there a little bit on the stormwater as-built that was submitted and paved. I was under the impression that that was, at least for underground conditions, all set or, approved by way of the Conservation Commission allowing that project to have paving. And so when we talk about changes or any modifications that would result in certificate of compliance as-built not lining up with design plans, that would be at surface grade layout materials features. We've kind of already addressed the underground components.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think we're basically talking about the slope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. Just want to make sure there aren't other concerns about other parts of the property that may not be conforming.
Not yet.
Okay.
But we haven't seen the as-built, I mean,
Yeah.
we assume that all the stormwater calculations are correct and they're in the spots that they were supposed to be, but we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, we've only seen the underground, which of course the runoff from the surface goes into that,
Yep.
so it's two pieces.
Yep.
Okay, understood there.
Awesome. Anybody else? Thank
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Thanks, Janet.
All right, next under informal is Matthew Teal, locus is 1 Arrow Drive.
Use the screen, the projector?
I'm sorry?
Screen.
Screen and
Oh.
the projector.
Sorry, I get a landmine over here.
You need the projector on?
Yeah.
Sorry, Jane.
So Matthew Teal, One Arrow Realty. We brought this project to you last year. This is the old Woburn Times building, One Arrow Drive. We've been to the commission a couple of times. You originally brought this project with a building addition and a complete, new layout of the existing parking lot and whatnot. Since then, we, had deleted the addition, and we came back to the committee with this revised plan. The last time we were here, we were still in the bidding process for the project and working on our budget. So we ended up deferring or continuing the hearings several months, and then we decided to withdraw our application previously so that we could concentrate on the building permit and, the work on the building versus the site. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're about to bring this back. We're on the agenda for the 27th. And the last time we were here, there was some discussion about handling where the existing stormwater enters the stream, as well as just stormwater on the site. And all I'm trying to do this evening is to get a little bit of feedback on our design approach and make sure that we're heading in the right direction, so that hopefully what we bring you on the 27th is, what you're looking for here. So this is existing conditions. The main area that we're looking to change is this area of the parking lot right here. We'll actually be removing a fair amount of pavement and putting in grass area. This is within the 150 buffer zone, which is this line right here. And it basically has us just changing the parking from being interior to being around the perimeter. And that will, result in a reduction of paved parking on the site. And then we put in some new handicap parking and ramp that's outside of the buffer zone. So within the buffer zone, it's basically reduction of pavement and adding in additional grass area there. So when we were here last year, you had requested that we kind of try to address where this, there's a, let me go to the next plan here real quick, sorry. Right now, this existing drain goes into the stream. It's quite deteriorated. It's been kind of some erosion there, as well as some overgrowth on it. So I think, Jerry, you had seen it in person and had commented about that we should probably, fix that situation. Right now, we have a lot of, sheet drainage. It's basically sheet draining over to that edge of the parking lot and then entering the stream from at that standpoint. So we're trying to come up with the right solution here that would be acceptable for dealing with that drainage within that area. What we've been looking at is putting in a storm scepter system right here. So that would collect all of our stormwater from this rear area here, as well as the majority of this area out in front. There will still be some drainage that will head to the street just based on grades, but we'll be able to pick up pretty much everything within this area, as well as around the back of the building. And then we would also add in a bituminous curb along this edge, to prevent that runoff from the driveway directly into the stream. So everything would enter into that storm scepter. It's rated for 82% retention of solids, so it's above the 80% required. We'd put in a new drain manhole here for the connection of that. And then, part of the discussion this evening was to just ask, what you would be looking for to kind of go into the stream. Is that just, we obviously don't want to be disturbing a lot, but we want to, fix the entrance of the pipe going in there, probably put some riprap on the edge of the stream to maintain it so it can, limit any type of future erosion there. But yeah, that was mainly what we're proposing, and we're just trying to get some initial feedback on if this is heading in the right direction for what you'd be looking for there. I have one other drawing. So this picks up the entire area that storm scepter is rated for. So the entire red area is what we're sizing that storm scepter for. So we're looking at this green line being, where the drainage would be coming from, going into that.
Is that size for bigger rain events, the biggest storms?
I'd have to check with the engineer on what exactly they were using, if it was a 50-year flood or not, but I'm sure it is, yeah. I'll find out for sure.
All right, any other questions, comments from the commission?
It's hard for us to, because it's not a public hearing, to really make too many comments. I do think you're headed in the right direction. Basically, that's kind of all I think I'm allowed to say right now. I mean, I think it's an improvement, I would say, over the last proposal, so
I would
I
concur.
appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say the same. I did have, I know, can't ask for much, but the plan is to regrade as well?
We'll be maintaining pretty much all the grades that are there. It already, we're basically just looking to repave the existing site.
I meant repaved, so the whole lot repaved?
Yes.
And eliminate what was existing closer to the building with grass?
Correct.
So
Correct.
it would be a reduction in the,
There would be a substantial reduction in pavement, yes.
okay,
Yep.
I like it.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah. I guess my last question is, what do you like to see in this type of situation with that stream as far as maintenance goes? Right now, seems to be collecting a lot of trash from the neighborhood. It's got a lot of overgrowth in there. I mean, I'm not, I just don't know what you would want us to potentially do for maintenance there, or nothing or anything as part of a project like this. I mean, we're not really doing any work in the stream other than where that drain would enter, so I just want to make sure that we kind of address that, if that would be a concern or a question from the commission.
I think that, again, that would be something, I don't think it's going to be like any kind of a deal breaker on how you maintain that stream as far as cleaning it goes. So I think that should be all part of the public hearing process.
Okay.
But I don't know that it's going to be a big issue. I think the fact that you would like to keep it clean and functioning as an intermittent stream is a great idea. But again, I think we can go through that
Right.
in the hearing process.
I mean, right now, there is some growth in there. There's some areas where there's, woody debris, trees have fallen in there and stuff like that. So I just didn't know if that should be part of what we propose, is to go in and, obviously no machines and stuff, but manually remove it, clean out trash. I don't know what would be the normal acceptable approach, in that situation.
I mean, I think, again, I think you could propose whatever you would like to propose, and then, we'll dissect it, during the,
Do you have anything that you normally require? That's, I guess, why I'm here. I'm trying to just get some feedback on, is there any type of standard or normal thing that you would want us to do?
Well, I know it's on the drainage, maybe you might want to think about scheduling a clean out, whether it's once a year, for the drain itself.
Okay.
As far as deterrent, we always, in this situation, you may have signs up there already, but you should probably have signs up there as well, so at least it gives you a shot at people knowing, for the no dumping or whatever like that.
Yeah.
At least have a deterrent.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks good.
All right, moving on. We
Thanks, Matthew. Thank you.
have public hearings, and first on the docket is Mass DOT, locus is I-95, I-93, notice of intent, DP number 348-868 for drainage outfall improvements. Guess I better move back.
Get your steps in.
My name is Alexa Marquis. I'm with GPI. This is my colleague Sam Campbell, and we're here on behalf of Mass DOT District 4 office. So we have submitted a notice of intent, and we have a DEP file number 348-0868. So our project is located behind Richard Circle. It's on I-95 at the I-93 interchange to the west. And there's an inlet right behind Richard Circle, and then 3 outfalls that it comes down to. So back in March 16th of 2023, there was an emergency cert that was submitted and granted, and it was to clear out the outfalls and the inlet. There was a lot of flooding that was on the roadway, and that was also backing up into residents' backyards at Richard Circle. So DOT went in and they scooped out as much as they could to try and get some drainage back and alleviate the flooding that was on the roadway. So the purpose of our project is to provide necessary drainage infrastructure improvements, and it'll facilitate future maintenance activities and reduce frequency of flooding along the corridor. So all of the proposed work activities will be inside of the state highway layout, and the project will result in alteration of BVW, bank, and intermittent stream, and land underwater. So there is an intermittent stream that is right behind Richard Circle, and that's what's outfalling to the 3 outfalls back in BVW. So our proposed work, we are going to be constructing 4 concrete head walls and splash pads that are going to be varying in size. And the reason for this is so that for future maintenance purposes, it gives the crews kind of like a sight line, so they're not just digging around aimlessly trying to find the outfalls in the inlet. And the splash pad will be there just so that they're not digging too far around and too deep. So this is, let's see, so this is outfall A, so this is the one that's furthest to the west. And so as you can see, there's purple, those are gonna be our swamp mats. And they're there just to kind of give a limit of work for the crews that go out and do this type of construction. We were a little generous in giving them some room, and we also received a DEP comment yesterday. And the comment was made that we are going to be over 5,000 square feet in BVW and land underwater impacts together. And that's including the activities that were already done back in March. And we counted them towards our totals. So what we're going to be doing is trying to shift our temporary impacts up just a little bit, but also give the crews enough space to work and get this construction done.
I'm going to chime in there. Yeah, so as Alexa mentioned, you can see the purple outlines the swamp mats, which would allow equipment to, traverse the rather swampy ground that exists within the BVW. As she mentioned, and I think as we saw in one of the previous hearings this evening, there's always a concern that we design and permit something and then a contractor can't actually complete that work. So the access area around these head walls is probably a little excessive based on the conversations that we had with MassDOT District 4 maintenance. We can actually probably reduce the footprint and thereby reduce the impact to bordering vegetated wetlands. So that is our plan. So just to sort of preempt that upcoming comment, we understand that that is a plan change that you folks would need. Our goal here tonight is just to introduce you to the project, see any other questions or comments you may have, and then address all of that together in one final revised plan. So what you're seeing here is sort of a worst-case scenario that's going to be a smaller footprint the next time we're before you. But we're just going to keep, presenting the plans that were submitted as part of this NOI and then open it up for some conversation with you folks.
Okay.
Well, being a former teacher, thank you for paying attention. Any questions, comments from the commission?
Yeah, so I had I guess a follow-up with the DEP, on the DEP comments, that they also commented that the project requires a 401 water quality certificate. Have you applied for that? Do you have that?
So we haven't applied for it yet. Part of what I was describing there, getting the footprint of the work down, we anticipate that once we reduce the work area in these various locations, we're actually going to be below 5,000 square feet combined for BVW and land underwater alteration, which is the threshold for a 401, and therefore the order of conditions when issued will serve as the water quality cert, and we won't need to file for a separate 401. Now, granted, if we get through this process working with you folks and it's determined that, hey, we actually, there's some variable that comes up that we need to keep the work areas that we have, we would apply for a water quality cert as needed.
Okay.
But
Is the square footage from the previous work included in that calculation?
Yep, it is. So if you look at the plan here, and there's one of these details provided for each area, the brown transparent area that you're seeing represents what was disturbed as part of the emergency cert. So we're trying to utilize the footprint of what was already done.
It's a good part of it then, okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
And you're not proposing to replicate or restore any of the alteration, right? There's going to be a permanent 3,000 square foot, say. So how does that jive with, I guess, the Wetland Protection Act and the limited project, right? You're still supposed to try to mitigate for what you're altering, and that's not happening. Is it impossible for that to happen out there?
I would say more or less. As you mentioned, this is a limited project, so we are trying to comply with the performance standards for BVW to the maximum extent practicable. The green cross-hatching that you see up there represents the temporary impacts, which will be restored in place with a wetland seed mix as needed. The red represents what we're calling a permanent impact. When we say that it's a permanent impact, it's primarily related to grade changes. So part of what's happening there is, if you see right at the head wall, there's a rectangle that represents the concrete splash pad. Mm-hmm. That's the only area within the wetland where you're talking about conversion of vegetation to a hard surface. The reason that we extended the permanent impact area significantly outside of that rectangle is because what's actually happening there is the grades being lowered than what's currently out there and what's in the surrounding wetlands. There's a chance and probably a likelihood that it will establish, but we also recognize that with that lowered grade, it could be open water for a number of seasons and would function, differently than a wetland would. So in that case, I think it's important to note that 3,000 square foot number is a conservative estimate of what would be permanently lost, but we do think that it would retain the functionality of a wetland system, especially one like this that's relatively overgrown with Phragmites already.
Phragmites will
and then
establish itself again right there.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
And then finally, the piece about replication, it's, within this system, part of the challenge that we're facing here is, when the highway system was built, the drainage management solution was pipe it and dump it into the side of the road. Mm-hmm. There's really no space between the edge of the roadway and where the pipe currently outlets for us to do replication. Part of the reason that we're doing head walls here to begin with instead of a flared end section and maybe a stone pad is because of the slope we're dealing with from the roadway into the wetlands. So to answer your question, know that we weren't able to identify any opportunities within this BVW system to do replication that we think would feasibly establish with the topography. So we're meeting the standard to the extent practicable and providing drainage improvements that will benefit both the homeowners on Richard Circle and the motoring public.
Right. Let me ask you, just as far as the grades go, what is the grade, the final grade in relation to the wetland? Is it a pool out there now? Is it going to be a pool? Or is it just going to drain out into the wetland? You know?
So to a degree, it will be, I guess you could say pooled. It will be lower. And that's to a, well, actually, let me. So you can see here, you've got 2 pipe outlets, and then this dashed line represents the finished grade.
Right.
And that is, below the elevation of the surrounding wetland. It'll sort of, naturally increase, slope up gently to existing grades.
Okay. And just, I know you spoke about, digging around trying to find the outfalls. Was that all sediment-related stuff? I mean, if there was maintenance going on as it should be on a regular basis, that probably situation wouldn't have occurred, correct? So, I mean, it comes down to maintenance, and I get that there's thousands of miles of highway that it's a tough job, but I just, we don't want to go through this again, down the road.
Absolutely. Yeah, this was something that we discussed early on when we were brought onto this project is, let's come up with a solution, but also what is the problem? Is it just deferred maintenance, or is there a bigger issue in this catchment area that's resulting in these backups? Like you said, step one is let's make sure that we're maintaining these things in accordance with an O&M plan as frequently as, MassDOT's able to do so. This design has 2 benefits, as Alexa mentioned. One, creating these head walls allows for a maintenance crew to actually go out and say, hey, there's a head wall here. I'm not just digging around trying to find a pipe end. 2, the splash pad allows you to, dig down. Your buckets on your excavator is going to hit concrete. You're going to say, okay, that's where I got to clean to. The pipe's clear. Whereas, I don't know if you could see, it's they're a little dark and muddy, but in those photos we showed earlier, it really was just exposing just a bare pipe end.
Right. Yep.
So we do believe that this will definitely make the maintenance easier, and therefore easy maintenance is maintenance that gets done. However, if we notice that these things are still accumulating sediment at a rate that's higher than what they would anticipate, MassDOT's aware that maybe they need to undertake, a bigger catchment inventory and figure out, is there a condition that's changed up or downstream that's contributing to this? But we feel that this, this is certainly a solution for the problem we're facing and could lead to a future project if needed.
Anybody else from the commission have any comments, questions?
Yes, just as a follow-up to what you were just saying, so is there then a schedule for, like, when it's completed to have regular inspections and analysis of how it's doing? Is that part of the project?
So District
For
MassDOT does its maintenance on a district level. This is, it's going to get folded into their overall schedule, but we can ask them what the current O&M plan says and try to get you those frequencies.
That would be great. And also, do you know what time of year this work would take place, or?
So that would also be we're thinking that they're going to use in-house crews to do this work, which means that, it takes out the process of, needing a bid process. But we don't know exactly when, but we can ask our contact with district and see, if they have already planned when they'd like to do this, assuming they get all the permits in time.
Yeah, if you could provide that information.
And, if the commission has a preferred time of year where they would like work to not be done in the wetlands, we could certainly, condition the approval as such.
Okay, great. And if you haven't already signed in, I think hopefully there's a sign-in sheet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions from the commission?
I have a couple of questions. Okay. So just one thing, when I went through the documentation, there's, just from a semantics point of view, in some places you call out the town of Woburn, and other places you call the city of Woburn. So I'd ask that you go back and take a look at that and try to make that all consistent.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the
Specific.
stormwater report, on Standard 8 and Standard 9, so both of those call for plans, and one of them, Standard 8, is a construction-related impact, including erosion, sedimentation, and pollutant sources. There's a plan for that, and I was wondering, were you going to develop that plan? Because right now I see a paragraph in this, but is there actually going to be a plan that's going to be added on to this for that? I would ask that you take that into consideration.
Yeah, so I would say typically the situation there is that's something that's done prior to construction, either by the GC or whatever entity is going to undertake the work.
Yeah.
And I believe that's part of the NIPD's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit that they would file.
Okay.
That's done usually by the contractor or whoever's going to be in the field rather than by the design consultant.
Okay.
But we can definitely revisit that language and make sure that, if there is a plan that needs to be produced, it's clear whose responsibility it is and when it's going to be submitted, and if the commission would like a copy of it, it can be provided.
That would be great.
Or if it's not needed and if it's covered on our construction plans, we can strike it through so that there's no
Okay.
confusion about a missing plan sheet somewhere.
All right, great. Yeah, I'd like to see that if you could provide that. The other thing is a long-term operation and maintenance plan, and I have to echo what our administrator has said. I think really that in the long run, it's the operation and the maintenance that's really going to carry the day. You even said it. You kind of said it in what is the problem? Is the problem a wetland problem where it won't recharge correctly or discharge correctly, or is it just overgrowth that causes the flooding condition? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think that in the end, that maintenance plan, that operation and maintenance plan, detailed in terms of what's going to be done, when it's going to be done, and who's going to do it, and then how do we inspect for it to make sure that it's working correctly, I think is critically important to this. And for any of these types of projects, but I think that for this project specifically, I think it's critically important. So I would ask that you take a look at that.
Yeah, I would agree. We can definitely confirm with district maintenance what their current procedure is, and we can share that with you. And if we feel that additional is needed here, we can discuss that.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing this is a public hearing, is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on this matter? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for one last opportunity. And I'm going to refer to you. Would you like us to continue the public hearing?
Yes, we would like to continue. We would just like some clarification on if continuing to the next hearing in 2 weeks allows us to meet your internal deadlines for providing revised materials, or if we need to go further out. So if we were going to get you a revised plan, do you need more time than that?
We would need it a week ahead by
Okay.
noon, so.
So noon
it's a
next
week-
Thursday?
Yes, a week from today at noon.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, overall, these changes are something we could tackle in that timeframe. So we would request a continuance until the hearing on the 27th. And if that's going to be an issue for us, we'll get in touch and request another continuance.
Thank
Okay, we have a request to continue the public hearing to June 27th.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah,
you very
thank you all
much.
very much. Oh, thank you. Good thing we brought that easel.
All right, next on the agenda is CCF, New Boston Property Company LLC. The locus is 216 New Boston Street, 225 Merrimack Street, mixed-use building. Notice of intent, PC number 348-869. And if there is anyone here that's going to speak on the matter, there is a sign-in sheet, if you would please sign in. And I would suggest that This is a new notice of intent, and our policy is to do peer review. And I would suggest that peer review is in the works. So with that said, we will take a look at your presentation, and we can have a discussion when you're done about peer review.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tom Schutz from Goddard Consulting. I'm also here with Nick Diocava, who's from Allen and Major, and also the applicants, Sean Sullivan from Cabot Cabot and Forbes, who are the applicants for this notice of intent. Perfect. So we're here tonight with a new notice of intent for the property. This property has been in front of the Conservation Commission before, and it was previously approved for a large development, including 2 buildings and a garage with associated parking, grading, and some work in the resource areas back in September of 2023. And recently we are back in front of you to have a discussion on whether we should be submitting a minor plan change or a new notice of intent for a downsizing of the project that was previously approved in 2023. So we'll just quickly run through some existing conditions. We'll look back at what we had previously gotten approved through a peer review process and through the Conservation Commission in 2023, and then we'll show you the new proposed notice of intent and the downsizing of that. So again, the agenda, just quickly looking at the existing concise conditions for anybody that wasn't on the board. I know that Commissioner Joyce had said that he's new and hasn't seen the property yet, so we'll quickly run through those. We'll look at the previously approved site conditions, look at the new proposed site conditions, and then answer any questions from the board if you might have any. So this is a 2-parcel property. This is 225 Merrimack Street, which is located down here, complete with an existing building and parking lot. And then we also have the 216 New Boston Street property, which has this large building here used for waste management. And then on the western side of the property is a materials processing facility that's mostly for mulch stockpiling, which is essentially all of this stuff in this area. The site is bordered to the north by New Boston Street, a landfill down to the south, which is this green area here, and then additionally Merrimack Street, which is down to the southeast. This is a 14.5-acre parcel zoned as industrial, and it is an existing Superfund site. Here's just some additional aerials of the site that kind of describes and gives a more recent view if anybody would like to see that. So existing conditions wetlands-wise and wetland resource-wise, there's several wetland resource areas that exist on the site. We have a large bordering vegetated wetland that is existing up here in the northwestern corner. Intermittent stream flows to the east out of that, down adjacent to New Boston Street. There are several existing stream crossings that are throughout this whole section of intermittent stream, and that's a very highly disturbed intermittent stream as it currently stands. It's mostly riprap. It's covered with invasive species, and then also has insufficient stream crossings that don't match stream crossing standards as they are currently standing today through the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act. We have a second BVW here down to the south, which flows to the north underneath a second stream crossing that connects the two parts of the lot on 216, and then flows to the north where they eventually meet up and then flow off-site underground through a pipe. These wetlands were approved through an order of resource area delineation back in 2022, so these are confirmed. Here's just a look at what the wetland resources currently look like on the site. This is the intermittent stream that runs through the center of the site to the north before it connects to the other intermittent stream. As you can see, it's completely lined with Phragmites and other invasives. Interior of it, it's not a great flowing channel. Underneath all of that muck and debris and invasives is a riprap slope that is also underneath the stream itself. This is just upstream of this picture here. Again, it's kind of just an industrial intermittent stream backed up by an insufficient culvert where the two parts of the site meet. And then this is the intermittent stream that runs adjacent to New Boston Street. So small little stream, all riprap. So as I spoke about before, the site was previously in front of the Conservation Commission for a large-scale project that involved 2 buildings and the reconfiguring of the lots. This side right here is Lot 1, which has included a large-scale mixed-use single-story building. We also had Lot 2, which included a 4-story mixed-use building, associated parking garage, parking areas, and then also Lot 2 kind of came into this ribeye shape, I would say, and came up back into where the BVW is here. And Nick can talk about why that was shaped as such originally. Stormwater was managed through deep sump catch basins, roof runoffs, and constructed wetlands. We also had 4 proposed stream crossings on the originally approved notice of intent that was approved in 2023. These 2 were improved stream crossings connecting New Boston Street to the Lot 1 building. We also had 2 new stream crossings that existed in the center of the site. Those both met stream crossing standards, as well as the ones that were reconfigured up in this area here. So we also did some improvements to the intermittent stream, including the daylighting of several portions of it with the removal of some large metal pipes, which would be in this area here. And then we also removed a section of, and daylit a section of intermittent stream that was in a pipe in this vicinity as well. So for proposed conditions, this is with our current notice of intent, our first hearing tonight. We are now proposing a single building on Lot 1 that is a 99,000 or so square foot, 2-story mixed-use building, which can be seen here with associated parking, truck turnarounds, and also truck usage. There's going to be now only 2 stream crossings. Those are the stream crossings that were pre-existing, located to the north of the building. Those are going to be now meet stream crossing standards as they had previously. Those are not changing from the other approved notice of intent that was before you previously. We're going to be continuing to daylight sections of the intermittent stream, which is going to include down here, and then additionally up in this vicinity as well. Stormwater is going to be managed similarly, and Nick can certainly dive into that more as he's the engineer for the project. But the entire project is downsizing, and I think the commission decided that a notice of intent would be better because it's certainly a divergence from the original notice of intent that we had submitted, but mostly just removing of the large building that was going to be in this vicinity, decreasing the amount of wetland impacts, that being bank of intermittent stream, and also bylaw wetland resource areas, the 150-foot buffer zone, 25-foot no disturb, all of that is going to be decreased. Now I'll let Nick divulge some more information on the actual decreases to all of those resource areas.
So again, for the record, Nick Delacava with Allen & Major Associates, the civil engineers for the project. So what you see here in front of you, we've overlaid what was previously approved with what's currently proposed with this notice of intent. Everything in red is what was previously approved. This is building 2, this is the garage. You can see at lot 1, building 1, the footprint of the building remains the same from what was approved. We've relocated some of the landscaped islands up along the front driveway to be evenly spaced with some of the new doorway entrances to the building. There is a lot of red showing up here. It's just the hatching that was changed in our CAD file. Previously, we had a solid gray hatch for the sidewalk. Now we're showing the expansion joints instead of a solid hatch, but the sidewalk remains in the same location that was approved. We reconfigured this back area where the loading spaces are. Its proximity to the resource areas has not changed. It's still set back the same distance from the resource areas. We just shifted around some of the transformer and generator pads to work better with the latest design. We have been progressing the design with the architects and the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers, and for the last 6-7 months now. And so as part of that coordination, we've refined the final locations for these pads to support the building. Now, from a stormwater perspective, like Tom mentioned, we do have two crossings up at the front of New Boston Street. The existing condition is, I believe there's a 36-inch culvert and then a 48-inch culvert. 36-inch culvert here that exists today and a 48-inch right around this area. We're going to be removing those and replacing those with open bottom box culverts. The size of these culverts has not changed from what was approved. Really the only changes from the previously approved plans are just some of the hardscape changes, just realigning some of the curbing and then moving those islands up along the front. It's the same number of islands, the same impervious areas being proposed. We're still providing deep sump catch basins with all the water quality units. We had designed wet water quality swales with sediment forebays for some of the runoff along the back of the property that discharges into the wetlands. That we're continuing to show that. We are still daylighting the front of the site. There's an existing 36-inch pipe where the existing stream discharges to, flows into the closed drainage system. We're expanding that stream by about, I believe it's about 100 feet to open that area up and allow for an increased linear feet of stream proposed. And so there is a table here that we've shared. There's a longer table on one of the plan sets. The intent of this red table is really to show just what changed from what was already approved. And so I'll just quickly go through it. We've provided 11% increase in the total intermittent stream linear footage. There's a 71% decrease in the streams that were previously being removed by those two additional crossings. And then disturbance within all the buffers, 25, 50, 150, it's a 20% decrease or more from what was previously approved. And so we do have a full plan set that we can bring up if there's specific questions about, erosion control or site utilities.
I have one right off the bat.
Sure.
The approved plan has a 25-foot no disturb. I did not see in the new notice of intent a request to waiver that 25-foot.
We can certainly submit a waiver request for work within the 25-foot buffer zone. However, we are reducing the amount of work that we are approved through.
But you're still going to be in the 25-foot.
Correct. We're still going to be working in it, but we're going to be decreasing the amount of work within it by 20%.
Right, I saw that, but.
So I think that's a net increase or a net benefit from what we were previously
Is it
approved.
just a formality you're referencing that we just need to include that in the filing?
Yeah, that's totally understandable and doable.
Yeah, it's just the process. We understand.
Understood.
Yeah. We got it.
And that's fine. We can add that
Be
in.
it a new notice.
Yep.
We would need that request.
Understandable.
Anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, just on that reduction, I would argue that the plans as proposed now is probably less environmentally friendly than they were previously. I think there was going to be some improvements made to the central stream.
Yeah, I can certainly talk to that. I forgot to mention that previously. The entire section of the northern intermittent stream and also the central intermittent stream are going to go through an intensive invasive species management plan. That's still approved, or that was submitted alongside. That was approved through the peer review process previously, and then also approved by this commission recently. We changed it only minorly just to include the new submittal and this plan here. That's the only thing we changed on there.
I thought I had seen in the new plans that the limit of work was basically outside of that central stream, but there was no new work being proposed in the central stream. Like I know you said in the presentation tonight that you showed pictures of it all clogged. Does that need to be dredged? Does that need to be properly does it have the proper drainage? Like, is the grade in there okay for the water flow?
Yes, so that was all reviewed previously with your peer review consultant. We actually proposed to redredge that whole stream and allow for, that water to drain more easily through that area. And the peer review consultant pushed back. They didn't want us touching that stream, at least limit the disturbance, and we'll clean it up for the invasive species. But as far as dredging goes, that was off the table. And it has a lot to do with, it is a Superfund site. There are protective cover requirements that EPA has that we are meeting. So the answer is no. There never was any dredging approved, and we're still not proposing it.
Wasn't there, and there's no dredging at all on either stream?
Yeah, so this crossing here, the main site driveway, when they build that box culvert, there is some work that is required to realign the stream with the new openings of the culvert to open that stream up. And that work is still being proposed, and it has not changed from what was approved. It was essentially a copy and paste to what you're seeing today.
And what about there's a couple of outfalls that are going into that central, are they at, like, what's the grade of the outfalls, I guess? How much of a drop is there between where the outfall is and the bottom of the stream, I guess, in the central stream?
The proposed outfalls?
Yes.
The proposed outfalls hit the bottom of the stream, right at the bottom of the stream. There's minimal elevation to work with on the site. We're actually building up the site from what exists today. The finished floor of building 1 is about 2 feet higher than existing grade in that area. So we've done that to manage the stormwater. Otherwise, the only way to manage it would be to sheet flow it off the site, and you don't get much treatment that way. So we are able, with our proposed design, to get it into a deep sump catch basin and have it pass through a water quality unit before it's discharged into the stream.
Another note too is this building is certainly going to have far better stormwater management features than what's currently existing on the site. Currently, it's just a large-scale processing facility for mulch that has no erosion control and hardly any pervious surfaces that will allow water to run into the ground rather than skate across the top of pavement into the intermittent stream. So that intermittent stream is certainly going to be more protected now with this building, our stormwater management features, and also our pervious green spaces than what's currently out there. And I mean, how mulch and sometimes like materials can move through stormwater processes. That will no longer happen, not only because the mulch will be gone, but because of our updated stormwater management.
Have you guys been out to the site recently? I mean, because I'm not trying to be wise, but the existing plans still show the mulch pile. Everything's gone now, right?
Yeah, yep, the mulch piles are gone. There is a large mound actually that exists right along there's the stream here, and then it kind of slopes up to a large mound that extends almost all the way to New Boston Street. That'll all be removed. I believe that's all invasive that's just overgrown.
Yeah, okay.
And all the trailers, I believe, are off the site now. I think the only thing that exists is the pavement, and then a lot of those Jersey barriers are still there. Is that right? The block walls and.
So Sean Sullivan with CCNF for the proponent. I'll sign in too, but so in the last month, our tenant, Site 1 Landscape, has left. So they removed all of the mulch, everything, all the improvements on site. So when we resubmit with the waiver, we can update the existing site photos and just clear up, obviously that was just very recently that they moved, so we can definitely update it with it's just a flat site now. There's nothing there other than the berm.
Okay. Yeah, it was I think the site prep, it's not that, I guess if you're going to submit, plans, then they should actually show what the existing conditions are, right? So, the site prep plan is similar to the existing conditions plan, so.
Yeah, and the existing conditions plan was the plan that was approved through the ORAD process, so that's why it's shown in that plan set.
Okay. So are there any changes to the plans that you've submitted tonight? As of tonight, there's no changes to the,
Since we submitted,
yeah.
so if we wanted to bring up the utilities plan, there was some sewer updates that we're still working on coordinating with the DPW director, Jay Duran. What we're proposing is less impactful to the resource areas. Essentially, we have an approved design that shows all the sewer coming out the front of the building. And it gets directed, it crosses the stream right in this location and connects to an existing sewer manhole on New Boston Street. It also showed us reconnecting, there's an existing sewer that runs right below the stream. It showed us connecting to that within the stream itself and bringing it in onto our site and then running it down and back over. What we're proposing now is just running the sewer up in front of building 1 and crossing, not touching anything inside the existing stream bed, because the previous design, again, it was to support the development of building 2 in this parking garage. And so since those are no longer being constructed, there's no need to bring any sewer back in this area within the stream limits.
Yeah, that's where I was kind of going with the question. I knew there was some back and forth with the sewer.
Yeah, and I believe Jay Duran and Jay Corey, I think they might be at a conference this week. So hopefully we can get some direction from them early next week.
Yeah, I think we're pretty confident that they're going to be comfortable with that plan. I think, again, we can submit that plan to you guys in the final version if we're adding these, the waiver, existing condition photos, and the final, utility plan. So it matches exactly what the city's going to approve from the building department perspective.
Okay. And then, going to the lots and the sizes of the lots, when I checked the city's GIS, the assessor's database, I come up with for 225 Merrimack is a .92 acre lot. Has the property been subdivided? I mean, what are the changes? And do you have that, I guess, do you have proof of that those changes have been made, the lots have been subdivided? I mean, why does it come up as .90? It even looks like .92 acres.
Keep going.
It's a very small parcel.
One of the existing ones.
Oh, there's 2 acres.
Keep going.
Yep, one more.
Keep going. That one. So I think that's the, no, yep.
Yep.
So yeah, this is what it was when we purchased the property 2 years or 3 years ago.
So this is 225 Merrimack.
Right.
The rest of it is 216 New Boston. We went through an A&R process to re-subdivide these 2 lots and reconfigure those lot lines to what we've presented tonight, if you wanted.
Yeah, so that's been recorded with the land court, with the registry. It probably just isn't updated with the assessor's map, but those are the legal lot lines now. So yeah, you
these
can
are
see
them.
them in dark bold here, right?
So I'll try to outline it here. This is lot 1. Lot 2 is the remainder on the right side with a sliver. It's kind of a pork chop lot with this chunk in the back. And the reason these lots are shaped like this is for zoning compliance, to get the minimum open space, meet the minimum open space requirements for each of the developments.
Can you get us the book and page on that, the lots?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for right now.
Any other questions from commissioners?
Go ahead. I was just going to say, had you finished your presentation? I think.
Yeah, we're all set. Yep, we're at questions now. So any
Okay.
further questions from commissioners, we'd be happy to field them.
I have just 2 simple questions. One's just out of curiosity on the second lot. I know you were gonna do something, now you're not gonna do anything and it's split. Are you thinking something will happen in the future, or is that forever gonna stay like it is, or what's?
Yeah, so we are trying to move forward with lot 1, the building that we're here today for.
Right.
So we're selling the other lot. We
Selling.
actually sold it, yeah. So we don't know, they might, but they're gonna have to come back if they do anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
That answers my question. On On the building, on the lot that you are doing, it was mentioned earlier by the chairman about peer review. We normally do peer review, and you mentioned already prior peer review. And I'm just anticipating, is it what you're saying is, because there was already a peer review, that we shouldn't have to do a peer review again?
So that is what the commission proposed last time we were here, that
Yeah.
you would waive the need for a peer review because it's substantially the same, for the improvements that we're doing. So that would be our hope.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I understood the point. Got it?
Just want to note that this also went through almost a year of peer review and 4 peer review reports. So this has been looked at very heavily by Horsley Witten,
Yes,
the previous peer review on
I
the.
remember. I got you.
But there are some changes to the drainage, correct? I mean, is there more water? I guess I was looking at the, say, the roof runoff. It looks like most of the roof runoff now is going out the front of the project into the eastern stream. That doesn't seem to be as many roof drains as there were previously. Is that correct?
So all the roof runoff still goes to the same location, to answer the first part of that question. The number of roof drains have been coordinated with the plumbing engineer at this point, and they've reduced the number down to whatever they needed to capture that roof, and then we just pick them up from there outside the building. So before, when we originally designed it, we kind of just do the best we can to estimate where they're going to want roof drains, but we don't really know exactly how they're going to design the inside and the roof of the building.
And so you're saying that the roof runoff drainage locations hasn't changed? Like,
No, but it still all gets discharged into the stream up at New Boston.
but there was some previously going out to the central stream. Is there still?
Yep, so there is the back parking area here.
Mm-hmm.
This still gets discharged into the central stream. And same with this, the whole driveway up along the right side of the building. This area where the trucks turn around beyond the parking area, this all sheet flows into the sediment forebays and then into the wet water quality swales.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I didn't see any snow storage on the plan. Do you have places set aside for snow storage, or did I just miss them?
No, I believe as part of the approved set, and I believe it was one of the conditions, that it needs to be removed from the site.
Oh, okay. Long-term operation and maintenance plan is?
Yep, it's in the drainage report that we had submitted. It's the same one that we had
Okay.
previously sent.
Same report? The operation and maintenance plan has been submitted, but it's the same.
It's the same, correct? Yep,
Illicit discharge compliance statement,
that's in there.
okay.
Yep, I know that was one of the peer review comments, that it needed to be submitted at this time instead of later on.
Okay.
Yeah, so essentially just to give the commission an idea of what we did, once we decided we're only moving forward with Lot 1, Building 1, we took our approved design and just deleted stuff from it, essentially. We didn't change any of the design on Lot 1 or Building 1. It was just kind of, okay, we're not doing Building 2. We'll get rid of all the sewer improvements for Building 2, all the drain catch basins that we were going to install with the reconfigured parking areas. The drainage report, again, was a copy and paste, and we just went through it, combed through it, and just took out things that no longer applied.
So just a couple of questions. The garage is being removed, so was the garage plan just for the parking associated with Building 2? So that wasn't needed for Building 1, is that correct?
That's correct. So you may be referring to, we did have an approved plan that showed a portion, I think it was 25 stalls, that relied on Lot 2 to use. They needed to use 25 stalls on Lot 2 to support Building 1. What we've done is reduced the net floor area of the building by eliminating a portion of the second floor to a net floor area that only requires the amount of parking that we have on Lot 1. We didn't want to have to rely on Lot 2 for anything.
Thank you. And also, I do not remember if you had any dewatering or any of that, and can you also address, do you need some kind of a work plan for like stockpile management from EPA to be approved, and what's the status of that?
Yeah, so we need a construction work plan approved by the EPA. We've sent them a draft, or we're working through that with them now. So we need that before we can start. And in that is any dewatering, which will just be localized dewatering, and we're working through with them what we can and can't do. We might be just trucking it off-site. So, we're trying to be able to get a NIPD's dewatering permit, but they're pushing back and trying to tell us that we have to ship off-site. So we're still, finalizing the details, but that will be worked out and approved by the EPA before we can start.
Okay, and would you provide a copy of?
Yeah, that was one of the
There-
conditions from the previously approved plan, so we can, same thing, that'll be a condition here, and we'll provide that before we start, and you have to sign off.
Thank you.
Any
Oh,
other questions?
Sorry, I just have one more
yep.
before I forget. It's going to pop right out of my head if I don't do this. Do you have any work proposed on lot, I'm going to call it Lot 2, I don't know what you're calling it, but the lot that's either sold or in the process of that?
Yeah, so you can see some things like the drive lane and such that are on Lot 2. So we have papered easements that are now recorded with the land court so that we can make all of those improvements. Same thing, we're still doing all the improvements like daylighting the stream at the north of the site, that's on their lot. So again, we have an easement there so we can perform all of those improvements.
And does that easement also allow you to do the maintenance?
Correct, yep.
As well, okay, great.
It's in perpetuity.
Did you submit a copy of those documents to us? And if not, can you?
Definitely can. I don't know if it was in the
Okay,
package.
if you haven't,
think
if
it
you
was
would,
included.
that would be
So
great.
we'll add the recorded lot lines and the recorded easements are on the same plan.
Great, thank you very much.
Anybody else?
I have just a couple of questions. So thank you for this new notice of intent, because I know that when you came before us a month or so ago, we were looking at both parcels, and you split it out. That was a request that I had too, so thank you very much for doing that. So one thing, you mentioned that there's an invasive species management plan or invasive species plan. Is that included in this? Because I didn't see it.
Yeah, it was included with the submittal of the notice of intent. I think it was it was in the appendix right before the plan set was.
Okay, so I'll look for that then.
Yeah, I could certainly forward over, Teresa, another copy to send to you if you'd like after the hearing.
Okay, thank you. In the operation plan, so I read through this carefully, there's a landscape management plan, and you talk about using different fertilizers in that plan, but you're not specific in what those will be. I understand you're saying that they're going to be trying to reduce the environmental, mechanical, and pest stresses to promote healthy and vigorous growth. Absolutely the right thing to do. But there's no specification on what type of materials are going to be used. And my question is, have you considered putting together, for fertilizers, any type of pest management, have you considered to put together an integrated pest management plan, which includes fertilizers and all the work you're going to do around your landscape? Have you considered doing that? Or do you have one?
I don't believe we have one, not, Allen and Major does not have one. We can check with the landscape architect to see if they've prepared one. And as far as the fertilizers go, what we can do, we're happy to submit fertilizers that we would plan on using for your review, if you'd like.
Yeah, that would actually be in the plan. So if you did an integrated pest management plan, you would list, these are the target species that you're looking at. This is the materials that you would be using, and how do you monitor it? That's what would be in that plan. So if you have a list of those materials, that'd be great. That's a good first start.
Okay.
So I think we can get that and then maybe just amend the plan and resubmit it.
Yeah, that would be fine. Okay.
I believe the invasive species management plan is in Appendix B, if you.
Appendix B? Okay.
It's kind of at the end of it.
Thank you.
Yep.
And just lastly, we talked about snow removal, but there is a section in this about using de-icers and different materials. It's the same thing as fertilizers. So I'd look for the same thing. What are you going to use specifically for de-icing your driveways, your walkways? And I'd like to know what that actually is, that material is.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Anybody else? And just so you guys know, I'm not trying to pull a quick one with peer review, but it's my job to make sure that when we get a new notice of intent, I remind the commission that it is our policy to look into peer review. And that's why I mentioned peer review at the beginning. So, any discussion on peer review, folks?
Mr. Chairman, I'll start. I mean, I believe we are all very familiar with this project because it was before us on several occasions, and I do remember the peer review well and the dialogue that was going back and forth. So I'm comfortable with what I see here. I didn't see much changes in as far as any of the infiltration or the drainage in the plans from the first time. So I'd be okay with waiving the peer review and in this case, and I'd make that motion, of course, unless there's more discussion on it.
Yeah. Any other discussion on peer review?
I share the same thoughts with Commissioner Meany, that it's kind of been done, and I feel comfortable with what was done previously as well.
Well,
unless there's other,
I'll be
thoughts
honest,
that are
I
missing.
was leaning towards peer review, but having listened once again to the presentation, I think I would be okay with that.
So, I guess, and I know there's a motion, I was just curious, you said there's no change, like, there are changes to the volumes of, the water coming off the site now. There's minor changes, right? That are captured with your, the drainage that you have out there. But there are changes, right? It's not
Yeah.
the exact same amount of, water going.
Nope. So, so the study point stays the same, but it's we're not touching lot 2 for the most part anymore. So it's just apples to apples. Yes, it's an increase, but we're not touching it. We're really only required to analyze the areas that either drain into our site, or areas where our site drains to. And so just looking at lot 1, the development of lot 1, building 1, the discharge points remain the same, and the volumes that we were holding and treating on lot 1 remain the same. So if you compare it to the previous design, we were adding landscaped islands, we were holding back some of the water. It's just not happening anymore, so that will affect the study point numbers.
Right. And that's why that would be my reason for wanting peer review to look at it, just to document those changes, but that's just me.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to make a motion that we waive the peer review for this project.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Any abstentions? Okay, this is a public hearing. Looking into the audience, is there anybody here that would like to speak on the matter? Hearing none, I will bring it back to the commission for any last comments. Hearing none, obviously, you're going to need to submit some more information, so would it be your request to continue? And is the 27th time enough, knowing that that material would have to be here next week at this time?
Can I ask for one clarification before we make any requests?
Sure.
For the integrated pest management plan, are you looking for a physical plan or just, a narrative added to the O&M?
Doesn't have to be a physical, so it can be an add-in to what you have, but it really should be almost a table, a matrix type of plan that lists what species you have on site, how you're planning to either use fertilizers on them or pesticides on them, any type of rodent control that you're going to put in place, that should be in that plan as well. And it should be specific in terms of what those materials are that you would be proposing to use.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
So yeah, we would request an extension or a
Continuance.
continuance till the June 27th hearing, and we can submit everything before next Thursday.
Okay, we have a request to continue.
Make that motion to continue the public hearing to our June 27th, 2024 meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you,
Thank you.
gentlemen.
Great,
Yeah,
thank
appreciate
you.
the time. It's a lot.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
No, just stand by once. Oh, sorry, twice. Here you go.
All right, moving on. Connoisseur Product Corporation, Locust 17 Presidential Way, notice of intent, DP number 348-865, water storm improvements. We have a request to continue to June 27, 2024.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we, at the applicant's request, continue the public hearing to June 27th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next, City of Woburn, Locust Middlesex Canal Corridor, notice of intent 348-864, multi-modal path. Notice of intent has been requested being withdrawn by the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to grant leave to withdraw without prejudice as requested by the applicant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, under business items. City of Woburn, Locust 75 Bedford Road, Hurl Park, notice of intent DP number 348-867, nature-based public park, and they have requested that we reopen the public hearing. We're not going to be doing any action tonight, but is that correct?
Well, the commission does need to vote. So,
On reopening.
yes, so the request, and I do believe the commission could take these up together. The request is to reopen the hearing. The applicant did get some comments through the MIPA process, so they would like the opportunity to address those comments. They don't have that ready yet, or they would have submitted that. So they have asked that the commission reopen the hearing, but they're not asking for the commission to reopen it to a date certain, but rather to a date within 21 days of the receipt of the additional information that they would like to submit. So I would recommend that the commission, if it's the commission's will to reopen the hearings, to just vote simply to reopen the hearings within 21 days. You could, within 21 days of receipt of the additional information that they're submitting.
so
And
yeah.
also that abutters would need to be re-notified, and it will need to be re-advertised as a hearing.
All right, so let me just read the other one, and we can do them together, and the only reason I want to read this one as well is because it has a different notice of intent DEP number. So the second request is the City of Woburn, Locust 75 Bedford Road, Hurl Park, Notice of intent, DEP number 348-866, and this is the Cummings Brook restoration.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to take the two collectively and reopen the public hearings within 21 days of receipt of additional information with a butter notification for both projects and a notice in the paper as to when the hearing will be.
On the motion, can I just have a comment or two? Because obviously, this is not typical and pretty rare that we reopen a hearing, but from what I understand, there's nothing saying that it can't be done. So I just want to make it known that this is not the norm, and it doesn't, and from what I understand, city legal has also reviewed and doesn't have an issue, doesn't see anything that would not allow us to reopen.
Yes, I did consult the city solicitor about this issue. I've also consulted DEP about it. My understanding, although the regs themselves are silent to reopening hearings, and you're correct, it is not common. But my understanding is that it can be done, but it does take a vote of the commission, and abutters do need to be re-notified, and it does need to be re-advertised.
I just wanted to be clear and let it be known on the record, so thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa, if you could, I know you said it, and I was listening, I just didn't hear it or something like that, but where did the comments come from that they're acting against?
Through the MIPA process.
Thank you.
There are many entities that comment. I think in particular it was comments from DEP that they were concerned about.
Okay, thank you.
It's something that they were thinking could come, and that's why I think we recommended that we stayed open.
And it
For
did
that
happen.
reason,
We thought it might happen, and
It's
it did.
just, but, okay.
We have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Terrific. We will do minutes for May 9th and May 23rd at the next meeting. Any site walks that,
Not unless the commission wants to see anything that was either on the agenda tonight, or although you don't know what's on the agenda, all the stuff that's downstairs for you to pick up on your way home, which at the moment escapes me. Do you remember what all the...
83 Commerce.
There's 83 Commerce Way, there's over, is it Merrimack? Merrimack and School Street,
Merrimack, yeah.
Merrimack Street, and do you remember what else is filed?
Was no.
We had a series of filings that came in today, so right off the top of my head, I just am blanking on what they all are. There's Pulte, refiled, and, the other one is the bridge, New Boston Street Bridge. So some of them are.
Yeah, 2 expirations of orders.
Yes, so some of them are sites that the commission is familiar with. I don't know if the commission wants to go out to any of those, but I don't have any other than that.
okay. Anybody else have anything to bring to the table?
I do.
Okay.
So we did get a request from VHB on behalf of the applicant to formally request reducing the inspections, this is at the Delaney, from weekly to once a month or after any 2-inch rainfall event. They believe that the vegetation is is actually excellent, and that there is no active construction on site right now, so they're asking the commission to waive or to reduce the number of, how often the inspections are done.
So they want to reduce from,
So it's currently weekly, and they want to reduce that to once a month or after any 2-inch rain events.
I think I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, the site's pretty stable. I make that move that we reduce the inspection report from weekly to monthly at the Delaney site, and with any 2-inch storm.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Anything else?
Yes, yes, well, so the I did receive an invitation to the commission for the ribbon cutting for the new Lions Park. And that is going to take place on Friday, a week from tomorrow, June 21st at 1 PM at Lions Park at Horn Pond. And
What
so,
time?
1 PM. So I do have copies, and if you want to pass those down, take that one. And I'll pass them out this way. I think you need 1, 2, 3. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have one more thing, which is the patches are here, so I'm going to hand those out.
Yay.
Two to Steve.
Everybody's favorite part of
I'm
the
bugging everybody about this.
So take one, pass them down. And please remember to pick up your packages. Everybody has something downstairs to pick up, except for the chairman who already did.
I like this. This is good. I'll add it to my collection.
I still like the old fish.
Yeah, really.
The old puffer fish.
Yeah, I like that, yeah.
Oh, thank you, Teresa. Oh, that's really neat. That came out nice.
Okay. This.
Thank you, thank you.
To have a collection.
Thank you.
Anything more?
Anybody else? I hope not.
Okay, hearing none, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Boy.
Ayes carry.
Ayes have it.